Hi, this is David Douglas, Managing Director of EBO, the digital agency. EBO are the proud sponsors this year of RadioMoLI and MoLI's digital programme.
Running at MoLI across a weekend in June 2024, Home Sweet Home was a multidisciplinary festival circling the theme of home. Taking place across the museum's exhibitions and historic house, and with programmes designed for all ages, the festival explored new perspectives on the central question of what is home through talks, discussion, performances, music, workshops, food, and more. In the festival's opening event, titled Remembering Home, writer and documentary maker Manchán Magan led a conversation reflecting on memory and home, featuring poet Nidhi Zak Aria Eipe, writer Melatu Uche Okorie, and fiddle player Caoimhín Ó Raghallaigh. Home Sweet Home was presented as part of Ulysses' European Odyssey, an epic project across 18 cities, producing artistic responses to social and cultural themes identified in James Joyce's Ulysses. Find out more at ulysseseurope.eu. For more from RadioMoLI, visit radio.moli.ie.
Nuachas ó crí agus hama microphone ar siúl, isn't it? You can hear me, can't you? Gama ar aus ar fad. So Misha Manchán Magan is screenor agus crealtor me agus be Misha mar Farati. So Manchán is my name, I'm a writer. And I'd like to introduce you, and I want you to focus for a second on, because the three stories of these individuals is fascinating. So Melatu Uche Okorie is from Nigeria and has been living in Ireland for the last 12 years. She has an MPhil in creative writing from Trinity, and her debut collection, This Hostile Life, was published in 2018. She's currently working on a novel, and her work has been published in a lot of different collections, in Dublin 10 Journeys, One Destination, in Ams on the Highway, in the LIT Journal, and in College Green magazine, as well as commissioned writing for different organisations. And then Nidhi Zak Eipe was born in India, but then grew up in between the Middle East, between Europe and North America, before calling Ireland her home. She's founder of the Play It Forward Fellowships. She serves as general editor now at Skene Press and Fallow Media. She's a contributing editor for Stinging Fly and an advisory board member of the Ledbury Poetry Critics Ireland. She's a recipient of the Next Generation Award from the Arts Council. And her first collection, Auguries of a Minor God, is published by Faber and Faber. Caoimhín Ó Raghallaigh Shiny Hiol. He makes his music on a 10-string fiddle called you've pronounced this so often for me. The Hardanger Amor, something like that, the Hardanger. He's performed everywhere, from the Sydney Opera House, the Royal Albert Hall to Carnegie Hall. He's released about 18 recordings to date, ranging from rather like traditional music to fairly far out stuff. And Caoimhín has worked solo but also collaboratively with the Gloaming, RIP, and this is How We Fly, as well as many others, as well as collaborating with Dan Truman, with Thomas Bartlett, with Brown Begley, Augustine Ella, and he's made music for film and for theatre. So beidir go gart doing tosnú le dras cheol, le písa cheol ó Caoimhín. Sure.
So, So, I would like to play for you a version of the song Una Bháin. And I fell in love with this version of it when I heard a recording of Móra Áine ní Gconacha from the Aran Islands. And the recording is maybe from the 1950s or 60s. And it felt very intimate the way she sang it. It didn't feel like she was performing it, but rather singing it for herself, and it happened to be shared with the tape recorder and anyone who cared to listen to it. And there's a quality to her voice that I really love, that it seems to break apart in the lower reaches. And I think of this attempt to play it as a kind of a translation from voice to my instrument and me. So, Una Bháin.
When I was thinking about the theme tonight, like returning home, it's such a vast subject, such a rich element to be focusing on, and is it like home in our bodies, or home in the land, or home in nature, or home in our biological family, or home in a new place we've moved to? And it struck me that, like, when you look at it through the prism of Irish, obviously Baile, I suppose, is home, but then there's also Duiche. Duiche is your native territory, your hereditary place, but it also means that place that feels most natural to you. And it's connected to Duchas. Duchas, again, the normal meaning of Duchas is heritage. But it can also mean tradition or connection or your natural affinity with a place or even a thing. And Duchas can also be wildness. So it's where, we can be untrammeled. And then Duhig and Duchas comes from the core word du, that's still in the dictionaries but isn't used so much anymore. And du means natural or proper, or that which feels right. So home, that which feels right. It can be very wide. And so with that, maybe before we start chatting, like, we have two phenomenal, a poet and a writer here. Melatu, would you read something?
Sure. How do I follow that? Right here. Well, let's try. Okay. The story that I'm reading from is called Arrival, and it's a short story of mine published in Dublin Tales, and it's from Trinity College. It's a collection of short stories by the English department in Trinity College. So I'll just read a little bit. It's a story about a girl coming into Ireland for the first time to meet her fiancé, and so this is someone she met online, and so she's coming into Ireland to meet him for the first time. So hope you enjoy it. Okay. She emerged from the baggage collection area in the arrivals hall and sat on her suitcase. Rustling through her handbag and unable to locate her hairbrush, she stood up and finger brushed her weave, after which she strengthened her tight-fitting denim-on-denim outfit. Remembering she had to keep an eye out for the person who was to collect her, she looked up and encountered a man's stare, as if he had been willing her to look up for a long time. It was a small airport, and he was standing a few feet away at the waiting area. He smiled, and when she returned his smile, he walked confidently towards her. She watched him strolling over, deciding he must be the one asked to collect her. She ran her eyes over him. He did not fit the image of a taxi driver. He was nicely dressed. The only thing Udeme had given her as a description for the person was that he was tall. He hugged her when he reached her. He was quick and unexpected. She smiled courteously. He took hold of her suitcase as if she was an old friend, and she removed her hand from the handle. Before she could ask if it was the one sent, he turned and headed for the airport's large sliding doors, wheeling her suitcase beside him. Hanging her handbag over her shoulder, she hurried after him. "Is that all you came with?" he asked when she reached his side. "Yes," she said, smiling and nodding politely. "I've never seen a woman in my life traveling with one suitcase." She tottered and shook her head. Of all the issues in the world to choose, he had to pick the one topic that would rile her. "Every woman is different," she said, giving him a scolding glance. "So they say." His answer was so offhanded that it could only be an unconscious thought said aloud. "Hey," she snapped, smacking his nearest arm. Her eyes met his surprised look. "Sorry," she added, putting out a hand apologetically. He laughed, turning away, shrugging and nodding all at once as if to say he probably deserved the smack. He stopped beside a shiny white BMW, which, like his looks, was not what she was expecting. She tried to steal a glance at him from under her lashes. He caught her eye, returning it with a steady look of his own. When he dropped his gaze, he rummaged in his pockets and brought out his car keys. Unlocking the car door for her first, he took her luggage to the boot. She settled into the front passenger seat, and as she waited for him to get into the car, her mind flew to what awaited her at the end of the journey. Instantly, she felt a tightening in her lower abdomen. She heard the slam of the boot, and soon after, he settled into the car. Putting on his seatbelt, he turned to her. "I'm Paddy, by the way." Opening a compartment in the car, he took out a business card. Nodding to acknowledge his name, she took the card from his hand. "Grace," she said, looking at the names on his business card. "Patrick, Paddy, McGinley." "Grace?" he asked. Something in his voice made her look at him, and she saw that he was looking at her strangely. "Was that the name your woman gave me?" he mumbled, the question directed more to himself than to her. Pinning her with a stare as if she would escape if he dropped his eyes, he tapped his breast shirt pocket, and ascertaining that whatever he was looking for was in there, he dipped 2 fingers into the pocket and took out a folded piece of white paper. Hesitantly, he read out of the paper, Ka, Chi. She gestured for the paper. He handed it to her. She recognized the handwriting as Udemez, the scrawl similar to those on the parcels he sent her from time to time. She turned the paper in her hand. She had heard of how Oyibos were distrustful of Nigerians, how every word from a Nigerian was dissected and examined. She wondered if this was going to be one such occasion and braced herself. After a minute or two, when he still did not say a word, it occurred to her that he may never ask her directly what she was guessing he wanted to confirm. Grace held up the piece of paper and read the letters one after the other. Kachi, Kachi, she said, correcting his earlier pronunciation of her name. Turning to see if by pronouncing her name right, she had managed to convince him that she was Kachi, she saw that he looked preoccupied. Holding out the paper in such a way that he could see it too, she said, you see, in Igbo language, our Ka is the same as your English Ca. But is it you, he asked, his tone, his way of telling her that he couldn't care less. She smiled to herself. Her emphasis on how to pronounce Kachi had been intentional to get under his skin. Did he really think she would get into his car if she doubted he was the one who Demet said was going to pick her up from the airport? As if she had never seen a BMW before. Handing the paper back to him, she explained, oh, that is me. Kachi is my Igbo name. My English name is Grace. I told you Grace because I felt it would be easier for you to say and remember. Oh, yeah, Grace is definitely easy to remember, he said. She glanced suspiciously at him. Was he being sarcastic? But his face was blank. A few seconds passed and he still made no move to start the car. She looked around her. The car park was almost empty and the road was free. I think I'll stop here.
Ah, nice, lovely. Nidhi, Melatu's writing reminds me of a line from one of your poems. A is for Arab, maybe home is in your mouth, in the words. But like when I even read your bio, they said you're born in India, spent time in the Middle East, in North America, in Ireland. Does that impact your focus or your sense of home?
I think I've always struggled when people ask me where is home. And for a long time, I wanted to be rooted somewhere, anywhere, it didn't matter, you know. But over the years, I've started to think of home as more of a point in time rather than a point in space. And I've started to find home, I think, more in the moment that I'm in rather than the place that I'm in. And so I think that's a way to circumvent maybe the idea of being uprooted or displaced or feeling unsettled in myself.
So, explain that more. There will be moments where you suddenly feel at home and it could be anywhere. The location isn't so important as something wider, something inside.
I think it's more of a practice for me. It's a practice of finding home somewhere that maybe doesn't feel like home, where you don't feel like you belong, where you feel foreign or alien. It's a remembrance, it's a practice, it's a ritual maybe of searching for somewhere to find a place to anchor yourself. And I've started to look at that more in terms of a time rather than a space, which I know sounds very amorphous and it feels like that for me as well sometimes, but there is a connection which feels like a rootedness, and that's the best way I can find to describe it.
And are you happy with that, or would you aim for something else, or is that the ideal?
I've never thought of it in terms of an ideal, but I think it's where I go to find refuge, to find solace, to feel sheltered, and I think that's sort of my conception of home at the moment, is somewhere where you feel safe. But something I read a long time ago that I always remember is a a line that says, "Scared animals return home. They always return home. It doesn't matter whether home is safe or frightening." And so there's also that tension between, you know, is home always a safe place? Or can home also be where you feel familiar but not necessarily safe?
Melatu has a great short story. It's called Sitting in the Car, of a woman waiting outside her home and knowing it's not safe in there. It's not safe. Do you think it's a complex issue, home, is it?
Yeah, well, over the years, if you had asked me this question a few years ago, I would have said that home is, I would have imagined home to be a place, somewhere where you feel comfortable, you feel safe, all of the things that Nidhi has just said. But then now I think that home actually, for me, I think is more of a feeling. And sometimes you can find it anywhere. It doesn't necessarily, have to be where you call home, or and it can be a person as well. It can be a group of people that when you're with them, you feel like I'm at home. So for me, home is much more of it's no longer just a structure, or a place. There are places where you feel more, and I think that it's beyond just being a house or the house itself. It's because of the people in there and the feeling you get when you're there with them. I think that's what makes you feel like you're at home. Yeah. So
I'm just back from Iceland, and I'm realizing that they don't have surnames, but they just go the mother's name and the father's name, and then daughter or son. They go. And that can be really uncomfortable, because sometimes you do not want to be associated with your parents. But yet, the Icelandic government don't like surnames, don't let surnames. There's a few people who can use surnames, but otherwise you have to lay claim to those above you, and that's not often the easiest thing.
No, but for me, I don't like. I love to lay claim to my parents. I hope that that the feeling is reciprocated. But I'm proud of my last name. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my parents. I'm proud. I don't. That's not even. It's not just. But I for me, it's beyond what I said. It has nothing to do with where being where you came from, or whatever the case may be. For me, I have a strong connection to my roots. Anyone that knows me knows that. To my language, to my roots, everything that has that, and that comes from my parents, because they instill that sense of pride in me. In terms of my roots, my our language, and our way of things. I would say. So for me, that is, and I feel that connect, and that's always, and I try to instill it in my daughter, and hopefully she carries that on as well, because that's what it brings, that warmth to me. It brings that feeling of home as well, the land and everything. I don't. You and I were having that conversation in terms of when people are, how people perceive people who live in the. We had. In the rural countries, or probably, and they send, that sense of people are poorer because they don't have this and they don't have that. But I don't believe that. I think that they're richer in that they're actually richer in their way because they're content. There's that sense, and you can't buy that. You can have everything, but if you don't have that sense of contentment in what you have, you're always searching for more. And I admire that about them, and I feel that sense of that's a sense of richness in what they have. That they're content, with that. And for me, that makes you feel, over time, once the city life starts falling away, you start feeling that way, and that in itself brings that feeling of home, that you've returned home, because you're connected to the land, you're connected to everything else. That's it.
And I did a series of conversations for a podcast with African people who were now living in Ireland, and a lot of them came from a town or a city, and like you come from Enugu, almost 1 million people, 800,000 people now, a big city. But every one of the Africans I met, despite they're from a town or city, they had such a strong connection with their grandmother or grandfather's place in the bush, in the country. And the simplicity, and they said, we like the fact that we can go to school, we get a library, we get sports centres in the city, but they were so proud that there was still some member just digging manioc or yam, herding goats, having 1 or 2 pigs. And we had sort of lost that in Ireland, that pride with our rural past. It's slowly coming back, but it was something I really envied.
I actually, I think it's one of the, I think it's one of the problems of colonialism, I would say, that we, it made you sort of like, I would say the same about Nigerians, probably people living in the city in Nigeria, that they would have that feeling as well in terms of people living in the rural areas, that they are not, they're not all of them, but I think that feeling actually comes when you've been away from home for a long time, and then you start thinking back. I get it's a sense of nostalgia or something like that, and you start remembering those simple lives, because you're chasing after a dream that you think is going to solve everything, and then you realize the closer, the more you're chasing after that dream, that is further away from you and is not satisfactory, and then you think back to the simple life you had, and that's when that feeling starts coming in, that, oh, I remember this, I remember that, how simple that life was and how enjoyable it was, so I guess that's where that feels.
I mean, Nidhi, I never made that connection, so of course it was because I was asking Africans in Ireland, in the same way when you ask Irish in America or in Australia, they're just so romantic about the past. Had you ask an Irish person here in Dublin, Caoimhín, mar sin cad fuatsa, like what does home and tradition mean to you?
I'm not sure, Manchán. I don't. Words are not my medium. I'm afraid. What does home and tradition mean to me? I suppose, well, first of all, I think Irish people have such a strong sense of place, in that the first thing you ask somebody is often, where are you from? That's how we see somebody in the world, is how we understand them, it's how we calibrate what to say next, in a way, and it's very disorienting to us when somebody says, what do you mean? Don't ask me that. That's highly personal. What do I do? But for us, we're allergic to the idea of somebody asking you, what do you do? So it's very important where somebody is from, but I'm not sure that applies to me.
So all three of you are saying that. It's not really geographical.
Yeah.
Nidhi, it's time, it's just feeling that's something bigger than a place, than a field.
Yeah. I suppose, I mean, I think what Melatu said there, very much the sense of being somewhere where you feel safe, and it's something you create yourself. Mm-hmm. You can have a house and it's not a home, and vice versa. A contentment, I think, is very, very much to find a way of being content, is how I feel at home. Tradition, then, again, I suppose one of the things that informs my whole approach to music now is, at a certain time I felt like I'd been inspired by a lot of music from a long time ago, and I'd embodied a lot of the knowledge, and found myself playing a forgotten language in some way, in the detail, in the extreme detail, in things that mattered to me. It seemed like they didn't matter to anybody else, and so you felt not that you're the last person speaking the language, but in some sense I felt like communicating with more people than spoke the very particular dialect, perhaps. And I'd decided, rather than cry about the loss of habitat, I would try and create new music to feel more at home in the modern world, I guess, that tries to take some elements and some neglected aspects of that old language and hold them up and shine a light on them and say, look, this is a beautiful way of looking at the world, be it the texture of sound rather than the note that you play. So maybe that's a little of my relationship to tradition. Yeah.
What a bold and brave thing to do. And yet it is something probably all of us are having to do. Like, as you're saying, particularly Melatu and Nidhi, if we are coming to a new country and thinking we're going to actually have to create a new tradition of making home, but the whole rest of us, with AI, with all of these new forces coming in, all of us are having to do that. We all never need to question home in the past. Home was just where you were, where your grandfather, your great-grandfather, and all of us are in this slightly uncomfortable place of having to reimagine what home is. Nidhi, would you read something for us?
Absolutely. I'm going to read a prose poem that I wrote for the publication for the movement of asylum seekers in Ireland 5 years ago. It's drawn from my childhood and it's following in the wake of the first Gulf War in 1990. It's titled L'amour, l'amour, a stunted symphony. There's an epigraph at the beginning which is by John Berger. It says, "In war, the dark is on nobody's side. In love, the dark confirms that we are together." 1. I was 6, going on 7, when the Gulf War washed ashore, a beached creature at our door. You could see the dark plumes from the oil wells even from here. The sting of it in my nostrils, the smoke smarting my eyes. They burned for months. This was the first time I would be moved, not just from my physical abode, but from the country I called home. From the beginning I grew up not merely displaced, but as a person without place, a being without fidelity, loyalty, allegiance to a single thing, a body thrown wide open to the wider world, a child knowing nothing except what it was that I would love. 2. I believe humans to be part plant, part animal, part fruit, part flesh. We need to be rooted to survive. Constantly torn from the soil before I was ripe, I developed traits akin to a chimera, split yet whole in a larger sense, missing though complete within a greater frame. This is how I learned to turn to the inside, listening for voices in the troubled breath of night, telling stories to keep the monsters at bay, singing myself to sleep. This is how I stumbled into the country of words. 3. Language was my first love. She remains my best love. Since the start, I have written in, through, to this love, lured by the promiscuity of those seditious, lesser-seeming languages, courted by that charismatic, seductive colonizer, mother of all tongues. I have worried love, pushed it, challenged it, questioned it. I have loved love and war. I used to pitch it as love's opposite, to pit myself against it. Yet in my insistence on understanding war, I have spent so much time with it. Days, nights, and early morning light, even in my dreams, have I maybe unwittingly loved it too. 4. War taught me to pick up arms. Words were both a weapon and a shield. In my hands, nothing was a gun. In my mouth, you could never be sure. In the 24 times that I left home, or the 34 years that followed, sometimes I doubt if this war was my story to tell. I thought I could escape, for I had privilege on my side. I thought it had not touched me, for we fled before the bombs. I thought it would not shape me, for I had not stared down guns. But I underestimated the impressionability of my own spirit. Once war comes for you, it rarely leaves you, split yet whole, missing though complete. 5. Even still, my voice is forever drawn to the literature of dislocation, memory, exile, the deepening hole of loss. I stay fiercely concerned with what divides us, with the fractures and ruptures that separate self from other, with violence, violation, appropriation, transgression, with bodies and borders and boundaries. It is a special kind of lonely that lets you recognize your kin, peering from behind shawls, living on the margins, dwelling in the spaces between what we lose and what we find when we are flung from home. 6. It is undeniably human, this want. To seek shelter, to take refuge, to belong. There are so many storms after all, and all I can give you are words. But words allow me to stand in the doorway, hold out a hand, invite you into a rush of intimacy. Listen, they let me say. Trust me. Language is body. Language is mother. Language is love. We can lay down in secret with it, sound its soft syllables out in our mouths. We can make ourselves known through it, announce ourselves present. We can come in from the rain, sing clear into the night. Listen, call it home, and we can find our way back together through this dark.
Nidhi, was there a strong pull for you to read that piece tonight in terms of home, or was it another feeling that sparked?
I've actually never read this piece out in front of anyone. I only wrote it for Massey when they asked. I usually stay away from writing personal pieces. But when I was thinking about tonight, and when I was thinking about what is happening in Palestine at the moment with an entire people who have been denied a homeland, whose homes and lives are being completely obliterated, you know, I felt that there was a need to go back in myself to that place that I turn away from in order to make other people feel comfortable, and to make other people feel like they belong in a space which is uncomfortable, and to not, I suppose, deny that conversation any longer. And that's part of the reason why I did choose that, though there were many other pieces I could have picked. But.
And like particularly on a day like today, where a lot of the mountains, the birds are all in service to our house, it was an idea, it was our concept when I was in school that was taught to us. And in this moment of urgency, from climate change to mass migration, we're beginning to realise we're going to have to break down those borders very quickly. Now, Caoimhín, to end, I could ask you another question. I have a question on this list from high up, from MoLI, but you're not going to answer it. There's no point in me asking the question. Whoever didn't get the memo. But if I ask you to do a piece of music, you're going to come with a beautiful story anyway. And it'd be a lot painless for you. It'd be like pulling teeth if I throw this question at you. So,
but you have to ask it now.
I know you built it up so much.
It's almost what Nidhi was saying, this idea of expanding into a bigger idea through folklore, through tradition. You spend so much of your time immersing yourself in tradition and then breaking out of it. So relying on a home people or a home place, a home environment, and then trying to communicate that or just to break it open and find a new way. Does any of that resonate?
That's what it says on the tin.
Well, would you like then to play us out? And if you'd like to say a few words before you play us out, sure. It's just the anguished look on your face when you ask a question.
So I'll play a piece called Cloud, and this started life as the most common traditional tune that everyone learns when they're a kid, Miss McLeod's Reel. Yes. And it's not the first tune you learn because it's a reel and it's a little more difficult. But pretty early on you learn it. And pretty soon after that you'll learn to hate it forevermore because everyone plays it. This version of it fragmented, shattered into tiny pieces that you pick up and look at for a while over and over and again, discard, pick up the next piece. Or you could think of it like a record of Miss McLeod's that your children took some sharp objects to it and scratched, and so the record just hops around the same few notes over and over and over again. So that's kind of, that's what it is.
Finally, Melatu and Nidhi, did we leave anything unsaid? Was there anything you wanted to say that we didn't say? That you'll be going home and saying, why didn't I say that?
Maybe I'll leave that to you. Was there anything?
No, but actually there was something that you said that reminded me, you know, when you said that we're all going to leave at some point and other people are going to take our place. I remember the story I used to love as a child. My grandfather used to tell me, so there was a monk in India and there was a seeker, and the seeker was going around from master to master. He wanted to find the ultimate truth, you know. So he'd go with his little backpack, and you know, he'd go and he'd meet these different masters in search of an answer. And he went to this one place where everyone said, you know, this is the enlightened being and he has all the answers and he'll be able to tell you. So he got an appointment with him and he went into the room, and there the master was sitting on this straw mat, you know, and no furniture, nothing around him, just sort of this mat and a little mug of tea. And the seeker was really curious, and he said, you know, you live here, you have this monastery here and so many people around you, different disciples, and yet you have such a spare room, you know, where are your belongings, where's your furniture, where's all your stuff? And the master said, well, you know, you've been wandering around the length and breadth of this country and yet you have this small backpack with you, you know, so it's not much different from that. And the seeker said, yes, but you know, I'm not staying here, I'm just passing through, I'm a visitor. So that's why I don't actually have things. And then the master said, it's the same with me, I'm also just passing through, you know. And I always loved that story, but it reminded me what you said, is that we're all just passing through. So this idea of settling and having a home and making yourself permanent in a place is actually, you know, a bit of an illusion there. So,
Well said.
With that, ní lawn ach gai me buachas livse geleir, dífse geleir contactamach and nocht, thank yous all. Agus gahaire buachas de Melatu Uche Okorie, to Nidhi Zak Eipe, no, I didn't get that right, Eipe, agus Caoimhín Ó Raghallaigh. And MoLI, and as you said, there's things on all weekend. Mi fi de buachas. Thank you.